Good morning, good people. Welcome to another episode of Just My Opinion podcast. I believe this is episode 35. I am burning the midnight oil. It is right now 4:12 in the morning. Your boy is mad busy. I decided to start this podcast a little early. Yes, I know there's not going to be a lot of people listening to this podcast live because it's 4 a.m. in the morning and I can't imagine a lot of people up. But nevertheless, I'm the best. Let's get into the subject matters. The Los Angeles Lakers heads are going to roll when the season ends in the next couple of months. There's a strong possibility that the Los Angeles Lakers are not going to make it in the regular format playoffs. And there's even a stronger possibility that they won't even make it in the play-in tournament. So heads will roll. Jenny Buss is mad. She can't take it anymore. I think this is do or die for Rob Pelinka over the summer. If he doesn't make the necessary moves to make this team at least competitive, then he'll be 88 out the gate the next following season, or he might not even make it to the next following season. He might get fired in the middle of next season. So he better. I'm just saying he better be on his A game this upcoming free agency and see what he can do with the limited resources and the limited options the Los Angeles Lakers have. Russell Westbrook is practically gone. He'll have 1 year remaining on that contract. That contract will be a little better for opposing teams. A little better. Maybe opposing teams may give the Lakers some offers. It's better than the 2 years he had last year when they was trying to trade him. So the door is cracked. It's not all the way shut on the possibility of Russell Westbrook no longer a Laker. Even the possibility of buying him out. Either the Los Angeles Lakers or whatever team that trades for Russell Westbrook. But that coach in La La Land ain't going to make it. He will be fired as soon as the whistle ends for this regular season. He's gone. He's gone. Now, despite what you think about Frank Vogel, some Frank Vogel supporters are saying that, well, he really didn't coach the roster the way he wanted to coach. You know, he's a defensive-minded coach, and the one of many things the Lakers are struggling with is commitment to defense. You got a defensive-minded coach, and the one glaring thing that coach brings to whatever ball club hire that coach is defense. And the Los Angeles Lakers are struggling on defense. You know, defense is not that hard to coach up, folks. But if you're not interested in playing defense, it's a problem. It's a big problem. And with that veteran ball club and the collection of players that either Rob Pelinka or LeBron James, you know, either one of them is not taking responsibility of the collection of talent. And I'm throwing my fingers in the air. Talent. Whoever orchestrated that talent, they need to question that person. Are you really helping the Lakers or are you hurting the Lakers? But either way, heads are going to roll this upcoming off season. And I'm going to be the first to tell you, folks, I'm probably the only one that's probably, as of right now, speculating this. I'm basing this speculation not on facts, not on the rumor mill, but something that I have been thinking about for the past couple of weeks. And that is the possibility of Coach K coaching the Los Angeles Lakers. Think about it, folks. Before you start commenting and before you start saying, it's not going to happen, just think about it for a second. The Los Angeles Lakers need to make a splash. And they also need to show their fan base, their loyal quotation marks. I'm using my quotation marks fingers again, second time in this presentation. Loyal fan base that they are about winning. The Los Angeles Lakers also are realists. Jenny Buss, Rob Pelinka, everybody in that front office, they're realists. They know that the Los Angeles Lakers are not going anywhere anytime soon. They're not going to be contending for a title for a long time. I feel like the first thing they want to be is competitive. And the second thing they want to do is make a splash in the offseason. Because just look at it, folks. They don't have enough money to trade for another superstar. They don't even have enough resources or draft picks or young players that other ball clubs may be interested in. So they're not going to be able to make a splash that way, particularly in social media and in the news and to show the Laker loyal quotation marks fan base that they are serious about committing. So if you don't have the resources and if you don't have the talent, the Lakers do have money, they do have pull, and they have one thing that a lot of other ball clubs won't have this upcoming offseason. Well, the Detroit Pistons may say otherwise. And that is time. They got plenty of time. They're not going to be contending anytime soon. And what better time filler is to make a big splash in the offseason and say, and in lights or in titles or in news articles, the Los Angeles Lakers have hired Coach K. Former Duke coach is coming to La La Land. The Los Angeles, and I know a lot of people are going to say, look, Coach K, I mean, in college, he's a great, phenomenal coach. But college ball and professional basketball are two different cadences. He might be great in college as far as recruiting, but I'm not too sure about him playing. I'm not too sure about him in the professional ranks. Hear me out, folks. The Los Angeles Lakers are going to be struggling. The struggle is going to be real for the Los Angeles Lakers. They're not going to be contending for no title anytime soon, even with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. Father Time is not tapping on LeBron James' shoulder. He is single-handedly telling LeBron the things you used to do in your 20s and in your early 30s, you're not going to be able to do that now. You're getting older, my guy. Meaning probably possibility of next year him being even further injured. Plus, LeBron James is not interested in contending for titles. LeBron James got other aspirations. He wants to play long enough to play alongside his son. He wants to get and secure the bag for the Kareem record or any other personal achievements and accolades that LeBron James is interested in. LeBron James has figured it out. You can't beat Michael Jordan with 6 titles and 6 finals MVPs. But what you can do is say, when you start building your resume, And his resume is almost solid as concrete. It's a little wet right now, a little moist, but eventually his time with the NBA and his career is going to be solid like concrete. Eventually. LeBron James thinking about, look, I may not won 6, but I got 4. I got MVPs. And then parlay all that with all the achievements and accolades that, which, by the way, I told you guys, in the NBA, no one really cares about the scoring title or scoring 100 points or triple doubles or leading in assists or in rebounds or in points average. No one cares about those individual stats and achievements in the NBA. Now, if this was the MLB, they glorified those achievements, those personal achievements, like the strikeout leader, the home run leader, all that jazz. But in basketball, it's a totally, completely different animal. What they judge you on, if you want to be the elites of the elites, is championships and finals MVPs. That's it. End of story. And he's not going to be able to beat Michael Jordan that way. Which, by the way, if I have seen some rankings, LeBron James is ranked second behind one person, and that's Michael Jeffrey Jordan. I have seen other standings where he's ranked third, and I have seen other standings where he's ranked fifth. And to all the blind witnesses out there, to all the LeBron James fans out there, is it a crime that LeBron James is the second best player in NBA history? Is it that a crime? I mean, really, I'm asking you a question. Is that a serious crime where you're going to cry in the barbershops and on social media and say, no, LeBron James has already surpassed Michael Jordan? Is it really a crime for him to be the second best player in NBA history? The second best player. Think about it, folks. He's going to be in front of Wilt Chamberlain, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Bill Russell. He's going to be in front of those guys. He's also going to be in front of Scottie Pippen. You know, a lot of people think that Scottie Pippen was the best thing since sliced bread. He's going to be in front of Kobe Bean Bryant. All those guys I just mentioned to you have more titles than LeBron James. All those guys I have mentioned to you have more finals MVPs than LeBron James. But yet he's ranked second, and the only person that's ahead of LeBron James is Michael Jeffrey Jordan. But all of a sudden, that's a crime. But that's another time for another discussion. Coach K. The Los Angeles Lakers, for the next 3 years, next year, they got one more year with LeBron James. LeBron James is going to walk after that year anyway, folks. And they're not going anywhere next year. So that's 1 year that you have time as far as if you're going to make a big splash in the offseason, why not try to recruit and get Coach K? You don't have a lot of pressure. You're building talent. And now you need a coach who has time in front of them and start drafting young players and start building that talent, similar to what the Houston Rockets are doing. They have collected a lot of draft picks from the James Harden trade and other trades, and they just drafted players. They already have a coach. They already have a coach there that came from the college world. And they're building something special there. Now, people can't see it right now. They can't see the forest from the trees. But I'm telling you, folks, in another 2 to 3 years, The Houston Rockets are not going to be cellar dwellers. They're going to, you're going to see some special things from the Houston Rockets. You see glimpses of special things with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Sam Presti has drafted and parlayed a lot of draft picks and made some big draft decisions in the NBA draft, and he still has more draft picks at his disposal that he's going to utilize this upcoming NBA draft. Yeah, they're cellar dwellers right now, but you're starting to see glimpses of what Sam Presti sees with that roster. He's about to do special things with the Oklahoma City Thunder. If you grow your roster organically, which is going through the NBA draft, you have a better future than a team that's mortgaging all their draft picks, all their young talent to win now. Because look at that format of winning now. Look at the Los Angeles Lakers. Now they don't have a future, and they're not going to be able to contend next year. And I can also strongly suggest they're not going to be able to contend in 2 straight years. They're going to be cellar dwellers with not a lot of draft picks. So what the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be doing, they're not going to be buyers. They're going to be sellers. They know LeBron James is going to play out his last contract. If Jeanie Buss is smart, I would just trade LeBron James sooner rather than later. Why allow LeBron James to play next year for you? You're not going to be able to contend nor compete. He's more interested in playing alongside his son. He's more interested in chasing for Kareem's scoring title and any other accolades that he can accumulate. He's more interested in that than winning titles. And like I told you guys, the Los Angeles Lakers, they believe in dynasties. They believe in winning multiple titles, not a title, multiple titles. And they're nowhere near close to that. So why keep LeBron James next year? Now, if you keep LeBron James, now I'm pretty sure if you keep LeBron James next year, then that's clearly a business move, because having LeBron James on your roster equates to dollars. But having only LeBron James and still a banged up, always injured Anthony Davis is not going to get you any closer to the title. It's just not. The bubble format has diluted a lot of minds. People that was scoring and could not miss in the bubble are struggling to find the rim this year. I'm not saying that bubble title doesn't mean nothing, but I always told you guys, all championships are created equal, but do anyone remember those championships the next following year, particularly when you're not defending that championship? People have already forgot about the Toronto Raptors winning their championship. People have already forgot about the Milwaukee Bucks who won the championship last year. People were forgetting, people was not even putting respect on that bubble championship that the Los Angeles Lakers won. People make, if you want to call these excuses, it was a strike. It was a shortened season. They had a couple of months off in between the seasons, and not a lot of teams were interested in the bubble format. And when you got all of those elements playing a part and in a factor of you exploit those factors to help you in the advantage of winning a title. Not to mention the part, you don't have to travel. You're playing all your games in one arena. I feel like 10, 20 years from now, people are going to disrespect that bubble championship. But like I said, all championships are created equal. But do anyone remember those championships if you're not defending that championship? That's the $1 million question a lot of people don't really have an answer to. So Coach K, the possibility of Coach K coaching the Los Angeles Lakers is not a stretch, folks. It's not a stretch. Now, can Rob Pelinka keep his job that long? No. Would Jeannie Buss will be on the hot seat somewhat, particularly with their family? Possibility. Would LeBron James sign an extension? No. He wasn't going to sign an extension anyway because you don't have nothing to make that team better. And it's not like you got Anthony Davis for the rest of his career. So those are the possibilities. I'm telling you guys, do not, if you hear the name Coach K is one of the possibilities of the Lakers going to pursue when they fire Frank Vogel, do not be surprised, and please give me my respect, because I'm pretty much the only one talking about it. Okay, moving on. Rory and Mal. I've done countless videos on Rory and Mal. The beef between Rory and Mal and Joe Budden, who was right, who was wrong. But before I begin today's topic, and I always have to say this when I'm talking about Rory and Mal and Joe Budden, because Rory and Mal fans and Joe Budden fans always come in the comment section saying this, that, and the third, and make excuses for both sides. I'm going to say it once. I'm going to say it twice. I'm going to say it 3 times a lady. I feel like everyone, Rory and Mal, Joe Budden, all handled it poorly. And I gave you my reasons why they handled it poorly. And I also said, if you sign a contract, you can't sign a contract and then you're in year 2 of a 10-year contract and now you don't like the contract. And now you're saying that the company owes you more money because you didn't have the fortitude nor the expertise to negotiate those things. You can't sign a contract and then you're in year 2 of that contract. And now you're looking back at it and saying, well, that was a bad contract for me to sign. This corporation owes me more. This corporation should be giving me more. It doesn't work that way, folks. If you sign a contract, you have no one to blame but yourself. Now, there have been, and I told you guys this on numerous live streams and videos, that Rory and Mal was not happy with their contract. That's clearly why they have an issue with Joe Budden. They're not happy with their contract. And Mal said this on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, something that I have already told you guys years ago, that they just signed the contract. They didn't really look into it. They had the same lawyer. Rory and Mal was represented by the same lawyer. That's your first mistake. I know that's your friend. I know you 2 guys think of yourselves as family, but you're not family. Your brothers from different mothers. Your interests are not going to be consistently his interests. His strengths can be your weaknesses and vice versa. So he said it on the podcast that when they was negotiating their contract and they signed the contract, he finally admitted that they signed the contracts. Well, we all knew that all along. We knew that. Okay, we know you just signed the contract. You didn't read what you were signing. And then what made matters even more worse, I guess Rory and Mal, these guys who always talked about other people's businesses and saying that you should read your contract, you should have a contract, talk about other people in the podcast world or entertainers and rappers, 360 deals, and talking about you shouldn't be signing those contracts. these guys thought it was a better idea to have one person represent both of them. And that was strike two. That was their second red flag. But then what makes matters worse, this is when your delusion strokes your ego. These guys were saying, quote, the guests that they were getting came to talk, to sit down with Rory and Mal, not Joe Budden. Joe Budden, as of right now, got a second interview with Nicki Minaj. And I remember the first interview with Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj was really vibing and communicating with Joe Budden more so than Rory and Mal. They were just there. They asked some questions, but you could tell through that whole interview that she's really there for Joe Budden, even though her and Joe Budden got issues. And I've seen this in Everyday Struggle when they interviewed the Migos. The Amigos was really there for DJ Academics, because DJ Academics can identify with the Amigos more so than Joe Budden. And there were other times in Everyday Struggle where the veteran, the older established hip hop artists like Remy Ma, she's clearly there to talk to Joe Budden. Now they do have a relationship, they do know one another, but she's more there for Joe Budden than DJ Academics. Now, I'm not saying that she's going to disrespect DJ Academics, but she's really vibing and communicating, and the chemistry is better with a Joe Budden, particularly when they're doing an interview. Just like Lil Yachty and the Amigos, they're going to vibe more with DJ Academics. Folks, there's nothing disrespectful what I just said. So in the old Joe Budden, when they was on the Joe Budden show, Mal is delusional in believing and thinking that when they was interviewing people on that podcast, that some of those people were interested and they only came for Rory and Mal. Charlamagne the God, who has a relationship with Joe Budden, and they don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. Let's just go and get that out of the way. But when they interviewed, hold on one second. When they interviewed Charlamagne the God and he came to the Joe Budden show, he came specifically for Joe Budden. And they even said that on their he even said that on his other podcast, the Fragrant, what is that? The Fragrant 2. I'm not a huge it's him and Soch. I'll be butchering people's names and butchering people's podcasts. I do apologize. But they even talked about it on their podcast, and they thought it was kind of weird that Rory and Mal, the guys who talk about other artists' contracts and deals and 360s and giving people advice about not signing those type of contracts, or just signing a contract and not reading the contract, or not having the proper legal team to represent you and to read the contract for you, because there's language in the contract that you're not going to understand. They're up here laughing and talking about these artists, but they just did the same thing. They signed a 360 deal, in essence. And these are the same guys that were telling the interwebs and telling social media or anyone that wanted to listen to them that they were bosses. And I laid it out why they were not. But that's you can check out my thoughts and theories and my opinions on those live streams and videos are up. But anyway, these guys done created a Patreon. And before we get into it, if you're popping in social media, if you're popping as a content creator, if you're popping as a podcaster, of course you're going to have a Patreon. Anyone that's established and is popping, they have a Patreon. And there's different tiers in the Patreon. And this is for people who are subscribed to your channel or who subscribe to your content. If they want to support you further, they also support you through Patreon. And in Patreon, you get exclusive things. You get things sometimes days earlier than regular members. They went through the Patreon tier of Rory and Maul. And the tiers, I'm not saying they're expensive, but a lot of people feel like they stole that ideal and that premise from Joe Budden. Because Joe Budden has a Patreon, and their Patreon is similar to Joe Budden. And I always told you guys, and if you've seen how they set their podcast, it's almost identical to Joe Budden's. And I always told you guys, you could tell who was the talented one, particularly when it comes to entertaining and what entertainment. If people are not talented, the second best thing they do, if they're not talented, they just copy off the original. Nothing wrong with that. So now they're coming out with a Patreon. A lot of people are questioning it. Do they even have a fan base that's going to support that Patreon? I feel like they have a fan base that's going to support some of the tiers of their Patreon, but not all of their tiers. They're not established yet. And I told you guys, everybody was gravitating to those YouTube views. Oh, man, they're getting more views than the Joe Budden show. A lot of people need to realize that there was a lot of people that were for Rory and Maul more so than Joe Budden. But then I told you guys, as the months go on, everything's going to go back to normal. Joe Budden's going to get his views back because people that are fans of Rory and Maul are also fans of Joe Budden. That's why you kept hearing them trying to upload their content on the same day as Joe Budden. They were trying to steal his thunder. And what the original Joe Budden fans are doing, they're splitting their time. They're still watching Joe Budden and they're still watching Rory and Maul. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some months in the year where they're not going to watch or listen to Joe Budden, and there are going to be some months in some years where they're not going to listen to Rory and Maul. They're just going to listen to one or the other or both if they have the time. But the second tier of your fandom are people that are who just now found you and knew of you from your new show. And I'm talking about on both sides of the fence. Rory and Maul and Joe Budden with Ice and Ish. Ice and Ish have their own fan base that's coming to see Ice and Ish. Joe Budden has his fan base that's going to come see Joe Budden. Rory and Maul are going to have their fan base that's going to come see Rory and Maul. And that's it. But that's all I got for today. I feel like at the end of the day, they will have a fan base that's going to support their Patreon and support anything that they do. But I feel like at the end of the day, nothing has changed. I still feel like Joe Budden is a bigger brand. The Joe Budden podcast is a bigger brand and a bigger name than Rory and Maul. That's why you've been noticing they've been on tour. They've been going to all these book club signings. They've been going to clubs. The same thing that Joe Budden was doing with the Joe Budden podcast. And they kept wondering why Joe Budden stopped doing it, because Joe Budden said there was no money in that. There was really no future in that. All Rory and Mal seeing is dollar signs. So what, and before I end this, what Rory and Mal doing is just selling their brand, their face to anyone. They signed a deal with Smacker. What is that? Smacker podcast. They got an exclusive deal with them. I forgot. I had it on one of my videos. I talked about it briefly. They also are doing somewhat of a tour with other podcasters, other smaller podcasters. I still haven't seen that big Spotify deal. Rory and Mal claimed that they was going to get, and I don't see them. They're still not swimming with the big shark. At least Joe Budden is in the ocean with the big sharks, and the biggest shark, particularly in the podcasting circle, is Joe Rogan. Spotify is willing to give Joe Rogan $200 million. At least Joe Budden got some was offered close. Well, it wasn't close, but he turned down that because he thought that at the end of the day, he was going to outdo that contract, which he probably would. And basically, Spotify would have gotten him on the cheap. But Rory and Mal did not see that. They were seeing dollar signs. They were saying, well, that's, we should have just took that deal. Joe Budden betted on himself to think that he could get a better deal. And still to this day, he hasn't established someone that's going to give him more money. Because at the end of the day, particularly in the podcasting world, if the Apple Podcast Center is not going to do an exclusive deal with you, it's only two places that's going to give you that type of money. Apple and Spotify. That's it. Okay? Everyone else is playing second to those two big industries. And if those two big industries are not going to give you an exclusive deal, then you're on your own. And in retrospect, I feel like Joe Budden feels like I can make those same quotas and still make that type of money by myself than to go ahead and re-sign up with Spotify. And then I outperform that contract. Not to mention, Spotify has more control with my brand. I'd rather just be independent, still make that same type of money independently without having an overlord boss, and just keep doing it until one day Spotify sees my value, sees my worth, or one day Apple sees my value and sees my worth, and I get that big Joe Rogan contract. But is Rory and Mal on that level? No. No. I think they're doing good. I wish the best for those guys. But they're not making the same type of money as Joe Budden's making right now. Joe Budden saved himself a lot of money by getting rid of Rory and Mal. I feel like another thing, there's two things Joe Budden did. There's a lot of things he done wrong, but I feel like the two most important things he did wrong was to overpay those guys and to put them in a stratosphere where their value doesn't equate to the amount of money that you was giving them. And two, overplaying your hand, thinking that Spotify is going to go back into the negotiation table and say, you know what? If that deal ain't fair, then we'll just give you this deal. Spotify said no, because they already had their golden goose in Joe Rogan. So they can gamble. And his relationship with Apple is not on the best terms. Because remember now, there was a moment in time where the Joe Budden podcast was exclusively for Spotify when he signed that first deal. And Apple did not like it. But it is what it is, folks. All right, so I'm up out of here. I hope y'all catch the rerun and the re-air of this. Normally I do these a little like around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. I just felt like doing it right now. Guys, I hope everyone has a productive Saturday. I will see you guys later. Be safe out there. Be careful out there. And I'll holla at you. Holla. Take care, guys. Take care.